if you are in Turkey, you were just taking a punt on this election result. You had no faith in the economy. Turkey was uninvestable up until now. And so the only constructive discussion I had with investors prior to this was, most of them were saying, I'm not going to take any risk. I'd rather miss the first 20%, 30%, and I will then invest the next day and just be ready. Others, the smart, the ones that are benchmark investors says, I'll just go neutral where I was zero before, then I'm taking no risk. Okay, they're probably a little bit regretting that decision, but they're performing in line with the benchmark. So anyone who fundamentally went in with naked long Turkey before the election result was, just like any election, basically taking a view on the polls. And as we've seen over and over for a number of years, basically I think since social media and people stopped answering the telephone, polls are really, really erratic these days, almost in every country.
Can we just bring up the geopolitics here? Because the pushback from Erdogan to the West at various points, his position in NATO, at times trying to power broke with the Russians in the war in Ukraine. I mean, recent history, there's been a lot. It's been very complex. Over the weekend, Erdogan accused his rival of working with the US President Joe Biden without producing any evidence to try and support the allegation. But what does it mean in the wash-up as we talk about outside influences in Turkey?
Yeah, so I think one thing we have to keep in mind is Erdogan is a known commodity, right? So there will always be people that say, oh, there's going to be a recalibration. And there's always an opportunity. I mean, if he wants to become the president of all Turks, if he ends up winning the second round, and it's not a given, because Kılıçdaroğlu endorsements will be relevant here, right? There are individuals that historically have been close to Erdogan. If they decide to come out against him, they will be quite heroic and they'll be taking a risk. But people can respond to actually more socially conservative Turks endorsing Kılıçdaroğlu. If that doesn't happen, let's assume Erdogan wins, there will be an initial Erdogan doesn't want to fight, right? He's already achieved his objective. So is Sweden going to get into NATO? I would put money on that. Guaranteed. Why would he fight that battle anymore? That was an election issue. Okay, you'll say it's associated with the Kurds, but he'll tell the top population that he got what he wanted, and now Sweden's getting in. So I think there'll be an initial head fake recalibration, but we know what Erdogan is. And he has local elections next year. Istanbul and Ankara mayoral elections, which he fought tooth and nail to try and win last time, and he lost both of them. Now, he either has a choice to continue to be massively populist during this entire period again to try and win those elections, or I think his plan B would be, well, let's actually end elections for mayors and let's let the president choose the mayors going forward. He has some big fights on his hands, and if he's going to recalibrate, awesome. The likelihood of recalibrating is less than the number of fingers I have on one hand. So I think from a geopolitical perspective, if I'm Greece, I do not like this outcome. There will be lots of Greeks in Turkey that have smiles on their face. Greeks right now, they might have smiles on their faces thinking, oh, this is funny, what's going on with Turkey? It's such a Mickey Mouse market. But this is dangerous geopolitically because Erdogan, for him to stay, if this is the last democratic election in Turkey, or if 2 weeks from now we're facing the last quasi-democratic election in Turkey, then the geopolitical outcome for the next few years in the region is going to be very, very volatile.
And if we could just canvass the Kılıçdaroğlu outcome, just in case in a couple of weeks' time we're looking at some sort of a change,
yep.
What does that mean in that context? Because already accusations that he would be much closer to the West. Could it be pivotal if there is a surprise victory for the opposition?
Oh, no. It would, I mean, closer to the West, it's different. It's impossible not to be closer to the West than Erdogan almost. So it doesn't mean you're aligned with the West if you're closer to the West. You're just moving moving a little more towards the middle. Turkish parties are very, nationalistic historically. I don't think any Turkish political leader is a sellout. So the likelihood of them, Ankara unfortunately used to be run by Washington. If you go back, they would do everything Washington would say, shut off this pipeline from Iraq, don't even ask for any compensation, huge pain, done, off in a day. So that narrative of Washington running Ankara, there are people in Washington that still think it should be like that. They're not constructive at all. But on balance, I would expect more rational behavior should Kılıçdaroğlu win. It'll be hugely transformational. That goes both economically and geopolitically. I mean, Turkey, what unfortunately it looks like up to 49% of Turks have voted for is an economic crisis. Because, Erdogan has run this economy just to get to this election. The next 2 weeks, we can see the currency collapse, right? Erdogan doesn't have the FX. And then so the big question after the election, this next election, presumably we're not going to have social instability over the next 2 weeks, but is going to be how tolerated is this election result. If this is the end of the democratic safety valve in Turkey, I'd already said geopolitically and economically this could be very messy. I mean, he has the ability to recalibrate. It's his choice. But my guess is if his goal is to disenfranchise Turks on a permanent basis, then he's going to have to start to think about the social ramifications. I would not be booking a trip to Turkey this summer.